Welcome to episode 2 of The Arc of Justice, a new series on Brookline Interactive Group's Big TV. My name is Eric Hyett. My guest this week is Ihssane Leckey. Ihssane is an immigrant from Morocco, a former Federal Reserve banking regulator, a Brookline mom, and the honorary co-chair of the Yes On 2 campaign, which has been promoting ranked choice voting in Massachusetts. Ihssane was a candidate for Congress in the Massachusetts 4th District Congressional primary in September 2020. Out of 9 Democratic candidates on the ballot, Ihssane was the only woman of color and the only candidate to have declared her candidacy before Representative Joe Kennedy III decided not to seek re-election. I consider myself a huge politics nerd, so I'm very excited that Ihssane was willing to come on the program to talk about the benefits of ranked choice voting and to explain why she's advocating for this change to our democracy. Thank you for tuning in. Well, hi. It is great to see you again, and I'm so honored to have you as my guest on the Arc of Justice. Can you just tell me a little bit, about yourself and how we came to be having this chat today?
Hey, Eric, it's great to see you too, and thank you so much for hosting me. I'm very excited for your new show. My name is Ihssane Leckey. I recently was a congressional candidate in Massachusetts 4th District from Brookline all the way to Fall River. And I am by trade a financial regulator. I worked at the Federal Reserve implementing the Dodd-Frank, battling the biggest banks on Wall Street and saving our economy and jobs for the working families. Originally, I'm from Morocco. I grew up there. I came here when I was 20 years old, lived in New York City, where I mopped restaurant floors and babysat and went to community college, and later on moved to Boston to go to school in Boston University. Became first in my family to graduate college. Lived in Philly for a while, fighting against food hunger, fighting to ensure that municipalities do not go bankrupt in the post-2008 financial crisis. And then later moved up to Brookline with my daughter and my husband. Now I have a dog, Benji, and really love it here and love serving the community.
Can you tell me, how did you guys end up in Brookline? I never asked you this. I mean, you and I have known each other a couple of years through racial justice work in the town, but I never asked you how you get to Brookline in the first place.
Well, when I was going to Boston University over a decade ago, I was, I lived in Dorchester, and then later on we moved to Audubon Circle, right near the St. Mary's area. But I was on the Boston side, so I got to, free street parking. And then when it was close to my graduation, my husband and I started to think about children, and we came in Brookline to look for housing. And at that time, it was way above and beyond anything we could afford. So it took us about 7 to 8 years to work hard and save hard. And then when our little daughter, Nora, was about to start kindergarten, an opportunity came up to work up here in Boston. And first town that came to mind is Brookline. We've always loved the Coolidge Corner movie theater. We loved the Brookline Booksmith. We were culturally living in Brookline while not living in Brookline during college, and it was great to be able to come back.
That's really cool. My parents' story is kind of similar to yours. Like my mom was at BU, and then they ended up accidentally living in Brookline, and then they're like, "Oh wait, we live in Brookline." Like they kind of the colleges do bring a lot of people in. So I'm really excited to hear that you've become an advocate for something called ranked choice voting.
That's right. So, I mean, if you know anything about the congressional race, we had about 8 people running. Voters had a lot of choice. There were many great candidates running. I was the first to run initially to challenge the incumbent, Congressman Joe Kennedy. And I, watched and saw how many people, decided to put their lives on hold and step in to represent their communities and to run for Congress. And it's not an easy undertaking. What I also saw, especially as the only woman of color in the race, as a woman who has experienced poverty here in the US, experienced wage theft and sexual harassment, and housing insecurity, and was denied healthcare, was denied a bank account. I have seen the way our system works to undermine people who come with those lived experiences, who don't necessarily have, the relationships into the donor pools, or the relationships into Beacon Hill or other establishment relationships, that when we step in and say, we bring to the table something that is even more important than resume qualifications, which is the lived experience, something that's much needed in the policy making. As we bring that perspective, we are underestimated, we're sidelined, we face a lot of negative campaigning against us, and therefore it really pushes us out of any chance of winning. Now, from the voter perspective, what happens is that, they connect with the story, they connect with the lived experiences, they want to see a more diverse government. They want to elect a Muslim, Arab American immigrant woman. However, they look at other aspects of so-called viability. They look at, who's who has endorsed, or how much have you raised, but they aren't voting from the heart. In our race, not only that was prevalence, but it was also the strategic vote, where people were saying, look, I really want to vote for you, Ihssane, but I don't want a conservative to win. And this is a progressive district. I've been saying it from day one. This is a progressive district. And the progressive vote was split in so many ways. And, the strategic voter who did not want a conservative wanted to lean in a certain way, and it didn't work. Now, with ranked choice voting, everyone will get to vote from their heart. Everyone will get to say, look, my first choice is so-and-so. My second choice is so-and-so. And it goes like that. And we go into kind of an instant runoff. You vote one time. You can still vote for one candidate if that's what you want. If you just want to vote for one, you can just vote for one. But if you want to rank them and express how you feel about each candidate based on the policies that they stand for, based on whatever really speaks to your heart, you'll be able to have that voice as you rank everybody on your ballot. That's why I'm fighting for this.
A lot of people talk.
Yes, on two on the ballot.
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of people talk about the Mass 4 congressional primary as a really good example of why we need ranked choice voting. I'm very interested that you've become an outspoken advocate for it since then. So it seems like you must agree that a more fair outcome might have come out from a ranked choice voting. I know it's impossible to look backwards and guess, but you seem to actually believe in this right now. What convinced you?
Well, seeing that, I just felt the same way when I was voting for myself on that ballot. I felt that, if it's not me, who would be my choice out of these candidates? But I didn't have a way to voice that choice, right? And so I felt really bad when my supporters were saying, some of my supporters were saying, I want to vote for you, but I think I was told that this other candidate could defeat the conservative and has a better chance of doing that. And so that was an unfortunate situation. I think with ranked choice voting, that would kind of go away. I think we will have a different way of campaigning that is more focused on what's important for the constituents, what's important for the voters. And that would be, where do we stand on policy? And why does it matter that we bring people, for example, that people of color actually get to win these races? Because we do bring a much more in-depth understanding of the lived experiences and how we can bring policy solutions that represent the most vulnerable, and that would, help our society go forward.
Thank you. Do you have is there an organization supporting Yes on 2 right now? Who are the sponsors of it right now, the official sponsors? And, how does that exactly work in terms of organization? I really don't know.
I believe that Rank the Vote is behind it. I am an honorary co-chair of the Yes on 2 campaign in Massachusetts, but there are other states that are also interested in pushing for ranked choice voting, and Rank the Vote US is working with multiple states to push for it, and I look forward to continuing to supporting that effort.
One of the pushbacks, and I'm strongly pro ranked choice voting myself. I admit right now I already voted yes on 2, and very excited to hope that this will come up. But one of the critiques of ranked choice voting that I've heard sometimes is it can sometimes lend an advantage to more educated voters, or voters who have educated themselves more on the process, because their votes would count more. They would rank the candidates more versus than somebody who maybe has less education. Can you think of, first of all, does that make any sense to you, or is that a dumb argument? And second, if it is a good argument, how would we address it?
I think that voters across the board have had to look at all 8 candidates running and pick their choice candidate. And in that process, with ranked choice voting, they'll be able to actually voice their thought process. They can actually say, I personally prefer this person, and I, based on my policies, for example, I'm only going to vote for people who support, for example, Medicare for all. And if they don't, then they're not going to be in my top 3, for example. We could run as slates of progressives. We could have organizations that endorse more than one candidate. We could be like the Planned Parenthood slate, for example. And that can signal to voters, okay, if you're looking for pro-choice candidates, these are the pro-choice candidates. So this is the potential that we would actually have. Voters are already doing that work on their own. It's only a matter of actually voicing that onto the ballot.
It's very interesting, that you've been able to pivot so quickly. For me, I might have just had to take a year off, but instead you've become an advocate for like a democratic change. It seems like you seem to be very, passionate about it, or feel strongly that this will be better.
I do, and I think it's a simple step. It does not resolve all the problems with our electoral system. Mm-hmm. We need to obviously fight against corporate money in politics, and in Citizens United, we need to fight for more information security around voting. We're still living in a system that is not safe. We know that what happened with Russia in 2016 is, there are attempts, there will still be attempts, and I love Elizabeth Warren's plan for voters' rights and voters' information security. I think that's important. Now, ranked choice voting is, it doesn't really change from a voter's perspective. You can still vote the traditional way of only voting for one person, right? You're not forced to rank, but if you choose to rank, you can. And that's, to me, a fight for voters' rights, a fight for more freedom of speech, right? So that's very important and fundamental to my continued advocacy for justice for all.
I really appreciate that. What did you learn about the MA04 congressional district from having been a candidate? Do you have any sort of observations for us about the district itself? I think Brookline people know Brookline very well, and maybe we know Newton, and then we're not really like most people in Brookline don't have strong ties to those other communities that go all the way, as you said, down to Fall River. What did you learn in terms of being a candidate about the district?
It's definitely a beautiful district. There's so much history, so many resources, economic resources. I think there are, we're a very, very diverse district. The statistics might tell you we are majority white, but that's the way of really oppressing your views on who lives here and what kind of people are here. Some people say we're all immigrants aside from the indigenous people of this country. Well, you know what? We do have indigenous representation in this district. We have Mashpee Wampanoag tribal land in Taunton. We have immigrants from the Azores. We have immigrants from Pakistan. We have immigrants from all across the world living in this district. And it's really a very culturally wealthy community. I think that when it comes to income wealth, however, there's huge disparity. There are a very small handful of towns that are so-called affluent, where you have, high level incomes. In some areas, we have, multi-millionaires and billionaires living here. And the majority of the towns, we're 34 towns, the majority of the towns are working class. The median income in Fall River is about $42K. You should go and tour the schools and see the differences between what we see in Brookline and Newton and what we see down in the South Coast. Also, the environmental impacts. I mean, if you really look from a lens of social justice, you start to see that, communities that are stricken by poverty are also stricken by pollution, either from outdated infrastructure that affected the quality of their water, or, like in Somerset, there is a huge toxic dump on the bay, and people have been fighting it for a long time now. But we know that that's where we see again, corporate power, for example, and the effect of that on state politics, and how our federal representatives are staying out of it and saying it's a town issue, for example. Like, all those issues come together into this district. We see some environmental justice advocates that have, made national news in this district, and some environmental justice advocates that have been completely shut down. I think from my perspective, the opportunity for bringing solidarity across the district is really huge. But it takes a voice that can truly connect with all stakeholders and can truly stand up for those who are most vulnerable and who need our assistance, and to help them get out of poverty and have a thriving local economy.
Well, you have a very high level of civic engagement. You've run for Congress. You're advocating for ranked choice voting. You don't seem like you're the sort of person that's about to just give up on all of these things just because, like, your first election didn't go the way you wanted. And by the way, still an absolute ton of people voted for you. It was really very, very impressive, showing as a first-time candidate. So, I mean, are you planning to stay involved in politics, stay involved in issues, and are there groups or organizations that you're going to stay a part of?
Well, it's definitely, it's like you've taken a dose and that's it, like there's no going back. For me, especially during this time, Eric, I think that our country is going through, a defining point in our history. Voting in this presidential election is voting for whether you agree with fascism or whether you want to give democracy a chance. And that's the bottom line. Not voting is the same as saying yes to fascism right now. That's the bottom line. I think that we're not here to, act as if we were defeated or that, we're going to lose hope or any of that negative sentiments. I don't think we have time or we have the privilege to sit around and say, we're not going to do anything about it. I think that, fighting for justice takes very strong stamina. It takes, accepting every failure as a learning process for how you can do it better the next time. And I'm very, very proud of the voices that we were able to represent through our campaign for Congress. I got almost 18,000 votes. That's not small. I think that getting calls from people who have said they've never voted before and they were going to vote because an immigrant is running in this district, that gives me a huge fulfillment that I have, delivered my duty as an American to fight for our democracy and fight for those who feel underrepresented. So I will continue to do this work, advising on ranked choice voting at the national level and serving our communities and truly working hard to organize for women of color who would run for office at any level, local or for state level or for congressional. And I'm here to help. People in Brookline, you should give me a call if you need help.
It's so nice of you to come on this show and be willing to kind of connect with the Brookline voters who may be really inspired. I mean, there were a lot of Brookline candidates, but as you mentioned, there was no other woman of color running in the race at all. And I too am hoping that just you're having had the courage to run against Joe Kennedy, your courage to stay in the thing to the end, and then to take a fairly narrow defeat and turn it around into like advocacy for a cause, just really shows your strength and your commitment to this. It doesn't seem like we're going to be losing sight of Ihssane Leckey anytime soon.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that.
Is there anything else before we go that I didn't ask that I should have, or anything else you want to communicate?
Well, yes, there's one thing. I am a Brookline mom, I guess. My daughter is in school. She's in 3rd grade. And right now, I understand how parents in Brookline and across our country, on top of everything else that we are going through, we also have this, the issue of our children being schooled remotely, whether that's, it definitely demands more assistance from the parents. And I feel for those who are, working full time from home or outside the home and having to, to give so much to their children during this time. And I stand with you and I feel you. I think our schools are deciding on the hybrid system coming up this coming week. And I feel nervous because my mother is still here visiting us from Morocco and she's over 60. And I have a lot of anxiety about my daughter going to school and coming back and bringing, COVID. And, whether my mom probably won't be able to handle that. God forbid if that happens. And I think about a lot of parents who are going through the same. I think there's a lot of anxiety and fear in the air. And I just wanted to say that I'm with you. Both parents and educators are all trying to do the best they can to give our children the education they deserve and to keep everybody safe. And just, do what seems to be safe for you.
Well, thank you for your sense of, you've used the word solidarity, and I really appreciate that. I feel that so strongly from your campaign, from the messaging that you put out, solidarity with all kinds of groups, whether it was Puerto Rican support for Puerto Rico, LGBTQ community,
Mhm.
Muslims, Jews, parents. You seem to be a very empathetic person across different categories. And that concept of solidarity is really what made me want to have you on the show, because I feel you really get it.
Thank you, thank you. Vote yes on two on this election. You know, early voting has already started. The yes on two is on the back of your ballot. So please vote yes on two. And I look forward to passing the ranked choice voting for you to have more voice. Thank you so much, Eric, for having me.
Thank you so much, Ihssane.